Hey everybody, my name's Jesse, and welcome to another edition of Gen X Thinks. And today is a user-inspired edition. We're going to talk about fashion. Fashion nowadays compared to fashion back in the 80s and even 70s and maybe a little 90s too. Actually, this episode was inspired by two separate users, so I'm going to give them both credit for this. Forgive me if I mangle the usernames. Christine Meyer 3843. Thank you, Christine. I appreciate it. And the other subscriber who deserves credit for this episode is Mike K0135. So let's talk about fashion. The earliest I remember was being a little kid, and our parents used to dress us up with bell bottoms, and we wore a lot of corduroy back then as like 5 and 6 year olds. Bell bottoms and corduroy, the fashion equivalent of a nuclear disaster. Yeah, it was horrible. I hated that stuff. I've always hated the bell bottom thing, the bell bottom look. Even the movies from the 70s, and the 60s, they're hard for me to watch. I'm like, I don't know why, but probably because I had to look at pictures of myself wearing that crap. It's horrible. And I actually remember, I don't know when it was, maybe the late 2000s or the early teens or something, that those bell bottoms and that 60s, 70s look came back into fashion, and people were actually wearing that crap again. And that just blew my mind. Why the hell, with all of human history to look back into and emulate, they picked the worst fashion decade of all time? So I never understood that. But then we move on into the 80s, and we wore a lot of really loud neon colors. We really did. Bright yellows and greens, neon blue and orange. Oh, we were really loud as far as coloring went. The ripped up jeans, for the girls, they wore those leg warmers. I remember jean jackets were big, but those would kind of be faded and threadbare too, or if not ripped up along with it, with buttons and stuff on them. We were real big fans of useless buttons and zippers in the 80s. We loved that stuff. I don't know why, but stuff, it would just have like flaps with a button, but it didn't unbutton anything except the flap. So useless buttons and zippers were a big hot item in the 80s too. I remember that. And everybody remembers parachute pants with the zippers all over them, just completely useless zippers all over them. But we loved them. They were awesome. And moving into the 90s, we had the grunge look. Your Doc Martens, just regular jeans, and whatever shirt just happened to be laying around, really. I mean, a lot of it was, I remember flannel shirts, so those were pretty popular, but you can look through pictures of Kurt Cobain and other grunge bands, and they were just wearing any crazy shirt. Wouldn't even have to be clean. They'd just pick a shirt up off the floor and put it on, whether it fit or not. I don't know what the deal was with the shirts during the grunge era, but that was a special time. And now compare that stuff to today's fashions. And I mentioned it earlier, but today it seems like a lot of emulation. It's not original. We might have been loud and zippery and crazy in the 80s, but we were original. We didn't look like the 60s or the 50s or the 20s or anything like that. You see somebody dressed from the 80s, you know exactly when that picture was taken, what decade. Same thing with the 90s with the grunge, or the 70s with the bell bottoms and the socks, the big knee socks with the 3 stripes around it pulled clear up to your knee. I don't know why they did that. In the 80s, we started pushing them down, and then they came out with the ankle socks. But anyway, Just another weird thing they did in the 70s and 60s. But after 2000, you get up in 2010 and later, and it's a lot of emulation. There's no more new originality in the fashion anymore. I mean, I honestly thought that they would be wearing, like the translucent plastic and stuff, like we used to see in the sci-fi movies back in the day. I thought that translucent plastic would be a lot more prevalent in the fashion, but it's not. And I just read an article, did a little bit of research for this. So, what are the kids in high school wearing today? And it's 90s. That's what they're wearing today. Grunge era fashion is in today. That's what they're wearing today. So I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. What do you think about that? What do you have an opinion on that? How there's no the originality of fashion has just kind of evaporated. There's no more new styles coming out. There's no more new ideas. It seems like they're just rehashing, like I said earlier, they rehashed the whole thing with the bell bottoms from the 70s and stuff, and I think they went through an era where they were kind of copying the 80s. I don't know. I could be wrong about that, but I just read an article about how they're emulating the 90s today. The kids in high school are emulating the 90s today. To me, that points to just how awesome we were, how cool we were, because we set trends that they're emulating, 30 years into the future, 40 years into the future. They're still copying us, so that's pretty cool. I mean, that's a compliment as far as I'm concerned. But what does that say about kids? I mean, we didn't just buy our clothes back then. We would buy jeans and then go back and cut them up, pour bleach on them. We would make them our own. All right. And then once that became a trend, then the companies started producing them pre-cut and pre-acid washed and all this crap. But we started that. They didn't just start cutting up jeans and selling them. That's not how that started. We started that, and then the companies who sold us the stuff picked up on that and sold it to us. So that's not, we can't say that, that's just the way that the industry is pointing and stuff. That's not it, because we created that stuff a lot ourselves. And grunge too. I don't know so much about the bell bottoms and stuff. I don't know about that, but in the 80s and 90s, we created those fashions ourselves. Those were homegrown, organically driven fashions that the industry didn't have anything to do with at the start. So, and that kind of homegrown organic stuff is just evaporated. I mean, I don't know. It seems like to me, with all of this emulation of these past decades. Now, I don't know what to think about that. I'm not really a big fashion guy. So if you have thoughts on that or an opinion on that, please put that down in the comments. Let me know. I'd appreciate that. Either here or there. It could be a great thing that they're emulating the past, or it could be, a bad thing. I don't know. But I think this is the first point in history where we are doing that. They weren't emulating anybody in the 20s. That was an iconic era for fashion, and but they weren't emulating anyone from the past. And you look all the way up through history, and they didn't emulate anyone. Each decade did not emulate any previous decade before it. In the 50s, they had the leather jackets and the whole James Dean Fonzie look, and that was cool. They rolled up the bottom of their jeans, and the 50s were cool too. I got to give it to the 50s. It's just the 60s and 70s where they went kind of off the track with the fashion. I mean, if I were living today, I think I'd rather emulate the Romans with their togas and shit than the hippies with their beads and bell bottoms. I'm just saying that, just whatever. But in looking back, I mean, I was in my 20s and I really liked the grunge era. It was cool with the Doc Martens and the flannel shirts and stuff. That was cool. But my favorite era was probably what had to be the 80s. Even with the loud, crazy colors and the neon this and the zippers and the buttons and the leg warmers and the ripped up jeans and everything, it was just iconic, and I really liked that. And we would put layers of clothes on just because. Just for the hell of it, we'd be wearing 3 layers of clothing and just pile stuff on it. It was just awesome. And I still like those looks when I see that kind of stuff. It's appealing to me. I don't know why. Some people, look back in horror at that stuff like I look back in horror at the 70s. But I think the 80s were awesome. I always love our style back then, and we were original. I think that was cool, and I always will. Probably after I retire, I'll go back to dressing like that. And I'll leave you there. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by clicking on the thanks button down below this video. Or you can do so by buying me a cup of coffee, and I'll put that link down in the description. If you're interested in Gen X gear, I'll put that link down in the description as well. You can hop over to Redbubble and browse through all kinds of cool stuff over there. Everything from stickers to backpacks, just all kinds of stuff. And if you don't want to or can't support the channel in any of those ways, you can do so by sharing these videos on your social media. If you do that for me, I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much. And like this video, if you have an idea for a future video of Gen X Thinks, please put that down in the comments. I really like doing these videos, bringing your ideas to life in episodes of Gen X Thinks. That's one of my favorite things to do. So I appreciate that. Thank you. And thanks again to the 2 subscribers who suggested this video idea. I appreciate it very much. And as always, stay frosty, Gen X, and I will see you on the next one.